Hey guys. Tonight, you step into a London street rinsed with cold fog, where gaslight halos bead along wet cobblestones and a faint drift of coal smoke tastes like toast gone a little too ambitious. Your breath lifts in pale ribbons. Your gloves squeak softly against the chill. A candle in a window flutters like a tiny heartbeat, inviting you closer. Before we begin, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. We'll walk slowly. A hansom rattles past, hooves tapping a steady lullaby. And somewhere, a kettle sings behind thin brick. You notice the hush between footsteps, the way doors exhale warmth when briefly opened. Citrus peel, damp wool, a whisper of soap all mingling. A lamplighter's pole tilts the stars a little lower, and your shoulders loosen as the street grows familiar. You feel safe inside the rhythm. Fog, footfall, flame, and the distant clink of cups settling you like blankets laid straight. Tonight, I'll guide you through Victorian nights, cold streets that taught people to huddle close, warm hearts that learned to share, candlelight dreams that stitched courage to sleep. You'll wander markets after dusk, kitchens that glowed like little suns, bedrooms sewn from quilts and hope, and quiet fears tamed by ritual. We'll trade heavy facts for soft curiosity and gentle humor, then drift together toward rest. If you'd like this kind of calm each night, go ahead and subscribe, and tell me your city and the time now. You notice the city breathing beneath a quilt of soot and fog. Each inhale carries the tang of iron, candle wax, and yesterday's rain pooling between cobblestones. Somewhere, a chimney sighs out ribbons of grey, mingling with your own slow breath. London, in the 1800s, was both furnace and lung. Tens of thousands of fires burning just to keep the dark away. The air shimmered faintly like dusted velvet, choking yet somehow comforting. You breathe in history, cough lightly, and keep walking. Back then, the night air wasn't silent, it hummed. Carriages rumbled over loose stones, their wheels biting against puddles, while 1,000 boots whispered on the pavement. Vendors shouted the last bargains before disappearing into the mist. The sound folded itself into layers, horse, wheel, voice, bell, until you couldn't tell one from another. For Victorians, this was lullaby and alarm all at once. And you, strolling through it now, find the noise strangely soothing. The smell of coal clung to everything: clothes, hair, even dreams. When you woke in the morning, the air in your bedroom might still taste like last night's fire. People knew the city was toxic, but they also called it progress. It meant light, heat, and comfort in a world still at war with the cold. There's a kind of honesty in that trade-off. You burn something to feel safe and pretend not to see the smoke curling back. Somewhere along the Thames, the tide slapped gently against stone, mixing the scent of salt with sewage and decay. And yet, oddly, Londoners found poetry in it. Writers described it as the city's heartbeat, proof that life pulsed even under filth. You glance at the water now, silver under gaslight, and it reflects your curiosity like a mirror made of secrets. You think, perhaps, that beauty and stench often travel together. In poorer districts, the fog was not romantic. It was camouflage. It hid the desperate and the weary, the pickpockets and chimney boys. But even there, candles glowed in windows like small declarations of defiance. Each flame said, "We're still here." You imagine mothers boiling potatoes, men removing boots crusted with soot, children whispering stories of ghosts and kings before bed. The night held both menace and mercy. The air pressed close, thick as wool. You feel it against your cheeks, damp and honest. A distant church bell begins its hour, stretching across the rooftops, slow and deliberate. Time moved differently then, more viscous, like syrup poured over cobbles. You notice how even noise feels slower here. Maybe the city wanted you to linger a bit longer before the morning stole the mystery away. Every few steps, you pass another lamppost, iron, ornate, proud, and watch as light trembles like breath against glass. Gaslights were still new then, symbols of order pushing back against shadow. They needed lamplighters to climb each post, turn a key, and summon day inside night. You picture them working their way down the street, leaving trails of fire like breadcrumbs for the lost. It's oddly comforting to think someone's job was literally to make light. You catch a glimpse of frost forming on a shop window, outlining the letters of tea and sugar. Behind the glass, an elderly woman is still arranging jars, unwilling to end her day. Her breath clouds the pane as she hums, and for a moment, she and the city hum together. It's a quiet duet between human routine and mechanical life, two rhythms coexisting, unaware they'll one day become nostalgia. The cobbles gleam underfoot, slick as slate. You imagine every footprint sinking a little memory into the stone. Boots of soldiers, heels of courtesans, bare feet of children racing for warmth. Streets remember in ways paper never can. They keep the soft echoes of laughter and sorrow, waiting for someone like you to listen closely enough to hear them. You pause beneath a balcony where ivy hangs limp and wet, brushing against your hat brim. The air smells faintly of laudanum and lavender soap, a mix that feels both medicinal and tender. The Victorians loved contrast, pain and perfume, death and devotion. It was all part of surviving the chill. You smile at the thought that they found beauty in contradiction, Alpat, something modern life often forgets. A constable's whistle slices the calm, thin and bright. Somewhere nearby, boots rush through puddles, chasing or being chased. But the sound fades quickly, swallowed by fog, as if the city decided to protect its secrets again. You keep walking, the rhythm of your steps slow and even. You realize the danger here isn't personal. It's simply part of the night's character, a necessary spice to the stillness. Ahead, a cat leaps from a windowsill, landing without sound. Its fur glistens with dew, eyes catching the glow like polished coins. You think of how many lives share this street, seen and unseen. The city doesn't sleep. It only changes tone. And as you drift deeper into this breathing labyrinth, the fog feels less like weather and more like a blanket, heavy but kind. You duck beneath a dripping awning, the canvas sagging like tired shoulders. The smell of damp cloth and chimney soot wraps around you. Behind the door, a woman sweeps coal dust from the floor, her broom leaving small black clouds. Victorian homes, especially in poorer districts, fought a constant war with soot. It crept into teacups, bedsheets, and lungs, a quiet intruder everyone accepted. You think of how comfort often came with invisible costs. The bricks here are rough, darkened by time. Their texture holds decades of heat, breath, and whispers. Every fireplace built in these homes was a promise, not of luxury, but of survival. The average Londoner might burn coke or peat, and the smoke would rise through crooked chimneys that coughed like old men. You feel the warmth leak through the walls and realize these weren't just buildings. They were lungs too, exhaling hope through soot. Step inside one of these rooms and you'd find a world shrunk to essentials. A kettle, a clock, maybe a Bible resting crooked on a shelf. The firelight flickered across tin cups and the tired shine of worn boots. Life looked humble, but it had rhythm. Families gathered close, not because it was fashionable, but because the air beyond their front door could kill with a chill. Togetherness was practical before it became poetic. You might be surprised by how sweet the air smelled near the hearth. Coal and wood mixed with drying herbs, rosemary, mint, sometimes lavender if they could spare it. Victorians believed fragrance could chase away illness. It didn't, but it made survival smell slightly better. You wonder what scent your own comfort carries. Maybe the faint electricity of a screen or the ghost of coffee. Upstairs, the floorboards groaned like sleepy beasts. The rooms were small, their ceilings low enough for smoke to cling stubbornly. Families often shared beds, not from affection, but necessity. Warmth was a communal project. In winter, frost painted flowers on window panes, delicate as lace, cruel as hunger. People traced them with fingertips and dreamed of summer. You can almost feel their breath fogging the glass beside yours. The kitchen was the heart, even if that heart beat unevenly. Iron pots hung above embers, soups simmered forever, and bread hardened into weapons if left too long. Housewives judged their success by the steadiness of their stove. If it burned through the night, so did their hope. You picture a woman adding one last coal before bed, whispering a small prayer that the fire would still glow by morning. The walls wore wallpaper like borrowed finery, floral patterns, sometimes hand-stenciled, sometimes peeling in surrender. Beneath each layer hid older dreams, the paint of tenants past, their laughter absorbed by plaster. If you pressed your ear close enough, you might swear you heard them. The Victorians believed homes had spirits, not ghosts exactly, but moods. And tonight, this house feels weary yet kind. Somewhere underfoot, a rat scurries near the coal cellar, dragging a crumb twice its size. The noise doesn't startle you. In this world, life and pest coexisted like reluctant neighbors. Even the wealthy upstairs learned to accept scratching in the walls. It was simply part of London's chorus. You think of modern cities now, quiet walls, sterile light, and realize silence can sometimes feel lonelier. A single candle burns near a cracked mirror, its reflection doubled, trembling. Mirrors were often covered at night in superstition, believed to trap restless souls. But here the owner forgot. Or perhaps she wanted the company. You catch your own faint reflection and feel time fold, your eyes meeting hers through centuries of soft light and domestic fatigue. The hearth crackles, spitting sparks that climb like fleeting stars. The warmth seeps into your fingers, and you imagine dozens of nights just like this, generations leaning toward the same flame, whispering the same small complaints. There's something deeply human about repeating history without noticing. Comfort doesn't evolve much, it just changes its shape. Outside, wind rattles the shutters, testing the nails. The city moans softly, and the chimney whistles a reply. Inside, someone hums a lullaby, the tune too old to name. You can't tell if it's sung to a child or to the night itself. Either way, it works. Your heartbeat slows, matching the rhythm of the fire's sighs. You realize that in this world of smoke and brick, people didn't need perfection, only persistence. They built warmth out of whatever scraps the day offered. Even their fatigue had beauty, a quiet dignity carved by survival. As the embers settle, you feel the city's pulse inside your chest, steady and tender. Soon, we'll step back into the fog, but for now, rest beside the fire. You feel the weight of the evening settle over your shoulders like a second coat. Victorians knew the cold personally. It slipped through window cracks and beneath doors, so they wore their defense like armor. Wool, flannel, corsets, and petticoats all stacked like paragraphs of fabric. Every sound was muffled by layers, skirts whispering, waistcoats sighing, boots squeaking against wet stones. Clothing wasn't vanity, it was survival stitched with thread. You tug your collar closer and understand why elegance always smelled faintly of smoke. The poor dressed in patchwork, whatever they could find that hadn't yet been claimed by the cold. Old coats passed down until sleeves became memories. Children's trousers cut from the ghosts of curtains. In wealthier homes, dressing was ceremony. Maids lacing corsets until ribs remembered obedience. Gentlemen tugging gloves so tight they squeaked. Everyone participated in the daily ritual of becoming presentable, which was really the art of pretending comfort. Fashion, after all, is only bravery in disguise. Wool was currency here. Sheep from northern hills gave their warmth to people they'd never meet. Each garment carried the geography of a nation: Scottish tweed, Irish linen, London smog woven invisibly through every thread. You imagine how heavy a life must feel when it's literally worn in layers. And yet, despite the discomfort, they called it refinement. Maybe beauty often begins where practicality ends. The smell of damp wool followed you everywhere, an earthy perfume that clung to staircases and prayer benches. Women hung clothes near the hearth, hoping they'd dry by morning, only to wake to steam and more soot. Still, there was pride in neatness. A polished boot, a brushed sleeve, even a clean handkerchief could separate you from despair. It wasn't about vanity, it was proof that you hadn't given up yet. On rare occasions, someone might remove all those layers to bathe, perhaps, or collapse from exhaustion. The shock of cold skin-meeting air must have felt almost sinful, a reminder of how fragile comfort really was. You picture the steam rising, the relief, the brief truce between body and world. Then the layers returned, armor against both chill and judgment. You can almost hear the sigh as each button fastened again. Tailors and seamstresses worked deep into the night, their fingers raw from needlework. Every stitch a prayer for coins that never stretched far enough. The wealthy rarely saw them, but their handiwork walked every ballroom. It's strange, you think, how the softest fabrics often come from the hardest hands. And under candlelight, that irony glows warmer than silk. The sound of cloth brushing cloth was its own kind of intimacy. Lovers knew each other not by skin, but by the rustle of fabric moving close. Even loneliness had texture here, the rough hem against your wrist, the chill seeping through a frayed glove. You notice how small sensations become entire worlds when comfort is scarce. A threadbare sleeve might hold more emotion than a poem. There was also etiquette stitched into every seam. To remove your hat indoors was respect. To keep gloves on too long was arrogance. These little gestures built invisible walls between classes. Yet at night, when everyone undressed for sleep, those distinctions melted like wax. Under wool and lace, everyone was equally cold, equally human. You find that thought oddly peaceful. If you lived then, you'd likely own fewer clothes but care for them obsessively. Mending wasn't embarrassment, it was devotion. A neat patch told a story of endurance. And there's something soothing in that, the idea that repair could be more honorable than replacement. You wish modern life remembered that rhythm. As midnight deepens, You imagine an entire city breathing through layers of cloth. Streets alive with the shuffle of skirts and coats brushing by. Every passerby wrapped in personal history, carrying warmth borrowed from another time. And as you move through it, your footsteps join 1,000 others, sewing sound into the fabric of night itself. The fog outside thickens, catching the faint perfume of starch and smoke. It smells strangely like home, though you've never lived here. That's the charm of Victorian nights. They make strangers feel nostalgic for lives they never lived. You exhale, and for a moment, the breath leaves your body like mist leaving a teapot. Soon we'll wander further indoors, to the small rooms where these layers came off and dreams began. But first, notice how the street holds its breath. Even silence wears a coat tonight. A bell above the bakery door jingles softly as you step inside, and the night exhales behind you. Warm air greets your face, thick with yeast, smoke, and the faint sweetness of burnt sugar. Bread was one of Victorian London's quiet miracles. Humble, repetitive, essential. Every morning began with flour and ended with crumbs. You watch as a baker dusts his forearms, the white powder glowing like frost under candlelight. He doesn't look tired, he looks necessary. The ovens hum low, brick throats radiating heat that feels almost sacred. Coal clinks as it's shoveled, the rhythm steady as breathing. Bread wasn't just food, it was trust. In an age before preservatives, you knew your baker by smell and sound. The poorer families bought day-old loaves, hard enough to double as defense, while the wealthy indulged in soft rolls, stuffed with raisins. Warmth came in crust form, and everyone wanted a piece. Outside, frost blossoms on the windows. Inside, the air trembles with comfort. Bread was political too. Scandals erupted when bakers mixed chalk or alum to stretch flour. People rioted for honesty in loaves. You bite into the idea of fairness and realize it still crumbles easily, even now. Still, nothing healed a weary Londoner like a heel of bread dipped in tea, shared with someone whose hands were as cold as yours. Tea was its own quiet revolution. Every kettle on every stove was a declaration of civility against chaos. Leaves from faraway hills traveled across oceans just to swirl inside chipped porcelain cups. Working-class families reused leaves until they resembled memories, while the rich measured them with silver spoons. Either way, tea slowed time. It gave conversation a place to rest. You can almost hear the soft clink of cups in the fog beyond. The aroma fills the room. Tannin, warmth, faint lemon if one could afford it. Victorians treated tea like medicine, gossip, and meditation all at once. Even the act of pouring was ritual. The steam rising, the careful tilt of the wrist. It was a performance of calm in a world that rarely offered any. You breathe it in now, and it feels like forgiveness in vapor form. Children would dunk stale bread into tea until it softened enough to chew. For them, that was dessert. It's humbling to think sweetness once meant survival, not excess. And yet, when you close your eyes, that combination of warmth and simplicity still feels luxurious. The human heart, you realize, measures comfort not by abundance but by relief. Some nights, bakers stayed awake long after the city slept, kneading quietly while rats scurried underfoot. Their world was one of patience and repetition. Bread took time, and time, in this city, was often stolen by poverty or smoke. Still, they gave it back to the people each morning, warm and fragrant. That's a kind of generosity that deserves prayer. Tea shops glowed like tiny lanterns along the streets, their windows fogged with chatter. Inside, strangers became acquaintances over cups that steamed like little hearths. Women discussed novels. Men argued about politics. Both pretended not to notice the draft from the door. It was democracy in porcelain form, hot, slightly bitter, and better when shared. There's something hypnotic about the way steam curls upward, the way it disappears but leaves warmth behind. That's what these nights were. Brief comforts that vanished, yet lingered in the memory like scent on a scarf. You think about your own rituals, the hum of a kettle, the glow of a screen, the small gestures that say, "I'm home." Maybe nothing's changed, only the tools. As you step back outside, the chill rushes in again, nipping at your cheeks. You carry the warmth with you, though, invisible but real. The bakery's door closes behind you with a soft thud, sealing the heat inside like a promise. The fog tastes faintly of sugar now. Or maybe it's your imagination. In Victorian London, imagination was often the richest spice. You walk on, slower, soothed. Somewhere ahead, a window flickers. Another story waiting to be told. The city breathes, and you breathe with it, steady as a loaf rising in the dark. You climb a narrow staircase that sighs under your weight. Each step creaks like a confession. At the top waits a small room, the sort that barely fits its own air. The smell is a mix of soap, smoke, and worn linen. Beds here weren't invitations. They were negotiations with the night. Stuffed with straw or horsehair, they remembered every sleeper who'd ever begged them for rest. You press your hand against the quilt and feel the ghosts of 100 weary sighs stitched into the seams. Most families shared beds, especially the poor. Privacy was a luxury reserved for aristocrats and dreams. Children slept crosswise to fit, feet tucked between shins for warmth. Married couples clung to each other more for heat than affection, though sometimes one led to the other. The cold made everyone generous in its own way. Even the smallest touch became gratitude in motion. Sheets were often damp, never fully dry in this climate. Coal fires couldn't reach upstairs, so people wrapped themselves in everything they owned. Sometimes hot bricks were carried from the hearth and slid beneath the blankets, early cousins of electric blankets, minus the safety. The bricks cooled quickly, but for a brief while they pretended to be summer. You imagine the hiss as moisture met clay, and the small smile it earned. Bedrooms also carried the scent of soap, harsh, alkaline, victorious. To wash bedding meant days of labor, so families did it sparingly. Clean sheets signaled celebration, a wedding, a birth, or a rare free Sunday. You think of how cleanliness once demanded courage. Each act of washing was a small defiance against the filth outside the window. Above, wooden beams trapped decades of breath. Dust drifted down like quiet snow. Some hung sprigs of lavender or mint to mask the odors. Others swore the herbs kept away bad dreams. Belief itself was comfort, perhaps. It cost nothing and kept the dark polite. You glance toward the ceiling and swear you can smell lavender that isn't really there. In richer homes, beds were architectural marvels. 4 posters heavy with drapes, tassels, and velvet canopies. The wealthy slept in shadows of luxury so thick they could forget the world outside. But even there, the cold crept under doors and whispered reminders that no one truly owned warmth. You smile at the irony. Gilded wood and silk still can't bribe the weather. Pillows were rare treasures for the working class. Many used rolled coats or bundled shawls instead. Feathers, when available, were plucked carefully and saved like coins. Sleep had a texture here, uneven, fragile, borrowed. Yet, when morning came, they rose anyway. There's something heroic in that rhythm. Exhaustion, followed by endurance, repeated until it became life itself. Children whispered stories in the dark, their voices muffled by blankets. Monsters, angels, and chimney ghosts filled the silence until fatigue replaced fear. You realize stories weren't entertainment, they were lullabies for the anxious heart. Every tale ended the same way. Everyone survived the night. That was the kind of ending people needed most. Some prayed before sleep, words soft as embers. Keep us warm, keep us safe, keep the rats quiet. Simple petitions from people who didn't need theology, only rest. You think of your own bedtime thoughts, how they often resemble prayers, even when you don't call them that. Fatigue makes philosophers of us all. The candle burns low beside the bed, its flame trembling like a last breath. Shadows climb the wall, gentle and familiar. You hear rain begin against the window. Steady, small, merciful. In the distance, a horse snorts and the city exhales. For a brief moment, the world outside stops mattering. The bed creaks again, softer this time, like it finally understands what you came for. You lie down, and the night folds around you, imperfect, uneven, real. Sleep here is not peace, it's surrender. But sometimes surrender is the most beautiful thing a person can do. You open your eyes sometime later, or maybe earlier. Time feels slippery here. A clock ticks on the mantel, patient and proud. Its brass face glimmers in candlelight, a small sun ruling the hours. In Victorian homes, clocks were luxury and authority combined. They dictated when to eat, when to work, when to dream. Every tick was discipline disguised as comfort. You listen to its rhythm and feel yourself sinking to it, like your heartbeats found a metronome. Candles, meanwhile, were the city's heartbeat. Beeswax for the wealthy, tallow for the poor. The difference was scent. One sweet, one rancid. Either way, both offered the same fragile miracle, light that didn't demand permission. You imagine fingers striking a match, the flare, the hush afterward. Shadows retreat like shy servants, leaving behind a small circle of safety. It's humbling how little light you actually need to feel brave. People measured nights by wax. One candle's worth of reading, sewing, or worry. When the flame burned low, so did ambition. That's how sleep announced itself. Not through exhaustion, but through darkness reclaiming the room inch by inch. You can almost see the wax puddling, hear it whisper as it folds upon itself. The quiet applause of time passing politely. The ticking clock and flickering candle were like old friends who refused to speak at the same time. The clock was certainty, the candle, surrender. Together they taught patience. If you watched both long enough, you'd learn the secret rhythm of being alive, persistence and impermanence, sharing the same room. You smile faintly, oh, that lesson hasn't aged a day. For the rich, clocks grew elaborate, carved wood, chiming angels, gold hands tracing ambition. For the poor, they were humble, sometimes drawn in chalk on a wall when even pocket watches were dreams. But no one escaped time. It visited every class equally. The Victorians feared wasting it, but they also feared having too much of it. That paradox still feels familiar, doesn't it? Candlelight softened everything it touched. Wrinkles blurred, grime turned poetic. and even loneliness looked almost holy. Lovers spoke softer under its glow, and letters read by it seemed kinder. Scientists might call it poor lighting, poets call it mercy. You lean closer, letting the warmth paint your face in honey and shadow. When the candle guttered, households grew hushed. Night was respected, even obeyed. Without light, you were forced to rest. There's a strange wisdom in that. Surrender by design. These days, we build machines to fight darkness, but back then, darkness won gracefully. You think perhaps it still deserves that dignity. Some superstitions said never blow a candle out. It was like dismissing a soul. Instead, they snuffed it gently, as one would close a child's eyes before sleep. You picture that moment now. The soft press of metal, the sigh of smoke rising like a ghost who doesn't mind leaving. The scent lingers, faintly sweet, faintly sorrowful. The clock ticks on, indifferent to sentiment. Each second lands like a footstep leading you somewhere slower. Maybe this is what peace sounds like. Time reduced to rhythm, light reduced to glow. You could stay here forever, between tick and flicker, forgetting that either will end. The candle finally surrenders, the wick glowing red before vanishing into smoke. The room exhales darkness, and the clock carries on alone. Outside, London's fog thickens, pressing against the glass like sleep itself, trying to get in. You let it. The flame may be gone, but its warmth remains, invisible, persistent, like memory or love, or the soft hum of history whispering, "Rest now." The night outside breathes slower now, and you catch the faint echo of a man's voice slipping through the fog. "All's well," he calls, his tone steady and practiced. The watchman's song, part reassurance, part reminder that someone was awake to guard the sleeping city. You imagine his lantern swaying like a tiny sun, the glass fogged by his breath. His boots leave wet crescents on the cobblestones, and each step sounds like punctuation in the story London tells itself to stay calm. He carried more than a stick and whistle. He carried responsibility. Long before electric lights or reliable police, these men were the thread-stitching night together. They checked doors, chased shadows, and sometimes woke the drunk or the lost before frost could claim them. Their eyes grew used to the half-light, learning to see danger in silhouettes. You can almost hear his sigh as he pauses to warm his hands around the lantern's cage. The fog dulls everything, edges, sounds, even fear. The watchman hums a low tune, one he probably learned from his father, or a tavern chorus. It's not beautiful, but it's honest. His voice floats between buildings, comforting the lonely and warning the mischievous. You picture windows opening briefly, a mother peeking out, reassured that the voice means her children can dream in peace. Sometimes he'd stumble upon stories, a lost ring glinting in a gutter, a cat crouched on a window ledge, a man asleep in the wrong doorway. He saw more life at night than most saw by day. Yet he remained invisible, fading with dawn like the mist itself. There's something poetic in that anonymity, to protect a city that never learns your name. You wonder if peace always depends on someone staying awake. His lantern smokes a little, the flame struggling against damp air. He shields it with his hand, a gesture so gentle it feels sacred. The glow reflects in puddles, turning them into tiny pools of fire. That light is all he has, no armor, no comfort, but routine. Still, it's enough. He moves forward, step by steady step, and you realize that courage rarely feels grand. It usually feels like doing your job in the dark. When danger did arrive, thieves, quarrels, fires, the watchman's whistle cut through the night like a blade. Within moments, shutters banged open, voices rose, and help stumbled, half-dressed, into the street. Communities were quick then. They had to be. Without telephones or alarms, survival relied on listening closely. You imagine the chaos fading back into calm, the whistle replaced by that same refrain. All's well. The phrase wasn't always true, of course. Fires burned, sickness spread, hearts broke. But saying it made it truer, if only for a moment. Words have that kind of magic. Spoken belief that bends reality a little. You think about how often we still whisper similar lies. I'm fine. It's all good. Nothing's wrong. Maybe that's not deception. Maybe it's hope disguised as grammar. Some nights, fog swallowed sound entirely. The watchman would hear only his own breath, the crunch of frost beneath his boots, the soft drip from eaves. In that silence, even loneliness became rhythmic. He'd stop, look up at a sky he couldn't see, and murmur a small prayer to the unseen. There's something comforting in that, the thought that faith doesn't always need witnesses. When dawn crept in, the watchman's lantern dimmed to ash. He'd hang it on its hook, stretch his aching back, and nod to the milkman passing by. Another shift survived, another city kept safe by habit and humility. You take one last look at his empty street, the faint trail of his footprints already fading, and think, the world still runs on people like that. The city exhales, slow and warm. Somewhere, a door opens to pour tea, a window lifts for air. Life resumes. And the watchman's voice, even when gone, lingers in the rhythm of the morning, whispering softly through memory. All's well. As the sun hides again and lamps relight, the city rearranges itself into a theatre of work. You wander down a narrow street where every doorway hums with a different rhythm. Clatter, chatter, wheeze, whistle. The air tastes like iron and yeast, sawdust and smoke. Victorian London after dark was never silent. It was a machine that dreamed in motion. By candle or coal flame, tradesmen stitched together the fabric of survival, one sound at a time. A blacksmith hammers iron still glowing from the day. Sparks burst like tiny fireworks before dying on the damp floor. His arms shine with sweat despite the cold, and his song rises over the anvil, off-key, confident, alive. Across the lane, a cobbler taps soles into submission, the rhythm matching his heartbeat. Every trade had its own percussion, turning the night into a strange symphony of necessity. You listen, and the city sounds almost alive. The baker's boy rushes past carrying trays of dough, his cheeks flushed from heat. Behind him, a tailor squints at a coat under weak lamplight, his needle glinting like a star. Labor here isn't punishment, it's pulse. You realize that for the working poor, night offered something daylight didn't. Quiet. A few stolen hours when they could craft without interruption. Even exhaustion can feel like peace when it's chosen. Then there's the scent of glue from the bookbinder's shop, sweet and chemical, clinging to your throat. He works carefully, pressing leather against spine, whispering to himself about stories he'll never have time to read. His hands leave prints darker than ink. You wonder if creation always demands this kind of quiet loneliness. Maybe that's why art and labor look so alike under candlelight. Further along, The tinker repairs a kettle, its metal singing softly under his hammer. He hums between strikes, eyes reflecting orange from his small fire. Children peer through the window, fascinated by the sparks. He glances up, winks, and returns to work. Even in fatigue, there's kindness, that unspoken Victorian courtesy, equal parts pride and gentleness. It lingers like the smell of burnt metal, faint but warm. Women work too, though less seen. You catch glimpses through thin curtains. Seamstresses bent over fabric, hands quick, backs rigid. They earn pennies for stitches that fetch pounds in the West End. Each needle pierces silence as if sewing patience into the night. You can almost hear their sighs blend with the hiss of tea cooling on the sill. There's a quiet heroism in being this tired and still creating beauty. The lamplighter returns, moving between doorways like punctuation. His pole lifts the flame into glass, one lamp at a time, like commas in a long, sleepless sentence. Each light he leaves behind burns above a different trade, the butcher sharpening his blade, the cooper sealing barrels, the printer arranging letters. Together they form the anatomy of a city: heart, hands, lungs, breath. Even the beggars play a role. They collect scraps, bones, cloth, and copper, the leftovers of ambition. Some sing for coins, voices soft and cracked. Others simply watch, learning trades through observation. Survival itself was a skill. You think about how modern life hides labor behind screens and walls. Here, work is theatre, performed on every corner. It's exhausting and honest. When midnight nears, shutters begin to close one by one. The hammer quiets, the sewing slows, and the city's orchestra lowers its tempo. Smoke curls upward, vanishing into the same sky that watches every class alike. You sense pride woven through fatigue, the kind that doesn't shout but exhales. This was London's heartbeat, thousands of small hands keeping the dark civilized. The street empties, but its rhythm remains, ghostly, familiar, endless. You walk on, carrying the echo of hammers and humming like warmth tucked in your coat. The tradesmen have gone to bed, their tools cooling in the silence. But the city still vibrates gently beneath your feet, as if dreaming of work it will never finish. You find yourself standing before a grand townhouse, its facade pale against the fog, curtains drawn like eyelids mid-dream. Silence lives here, dressed in velvet. The wealthy slept differently, or at least tried to. Their rooms smelled of beeswax and tobacco, their carpets swallowing sound. Even footsteps had manners. Inside, the air feels thick with perfume and restraint, as though conversation itself required permission. You push the door open in your imagination, and the silence folds around you like fur. The servants have retreated below stairs, the masters above. Between them, the staircase rises like a social ladder carved from oak. Every tread creaks according to rank, heavy for boots, light for slippers. In the drawing room, a clock ticks too loudly for comfort, counting the hours of people who never lift coal or hammer iron. Comfort here is curated, a performance of stillness meant to look effortless. Yet, even in luxury, insomnia whispers. You wander through the parlor, where portraits of ancestors glare from the walls. Their eyes follow you as if checking etiquette. A half-finished glass of brandy rests on a piano, the amber liquid catching light like trapped sunlight. It smells faintly of sugar and regret. The Victorians loved propriety but often drank to escape it. You smile, Some habits outlive centuries. Upstairs, the master bedroom glows with candlelight filtered through lace. The bed is enormous, heavy with drapes and unspoken thoughts. The lady of the house sits by the mirror, brushing her hair in practiced strokes. 100 for health, 100 for control. Each strand glints like silk, spun from patience. Her maid, silent as furniture, stands nearby holding a candle that trembles with her exhaustion. The man beside the bed snores softly, face turned toward the warmth of the fire. His dreams smell of politics and smoke. The wallpaper glows faintly, florals bathed in amber. You imagine the quiet conversations that happened here, the sort spoken in half sentences and polite tones, yet carrying the full weight of longing. In every elegant home, silence hides a story louder than any street cry. Outside, the city hums, but inside the silence thickens until you can almost hear it breathe. The candle gutters, throwing brief chaos across the walls, a flicker, a shadow shaped like doubt. Then stillness again. You realize how fragile serenity becomes when bought in bulk. Even silence, you think, demands maintenance. A cat leaps onto the windowsill, tail brushing the curtain. Its purr seems almost scandalous in this hush. Somewhere below, a servant coughs, then catches herself, as though noise were treason. This is what hierarchy sounds like. Absence enforced by fear. And yet, even here, the air carries tenderness, the faint warmth of people who, for all their differences, still seek the same simple peace. You notice a discarded glove on the floor, pale kid leather, delicate, human. It's such a small imperfection in such a curated room. You find it oddly comforting. Even perfection drops things sometimes. You pick it up, trace its softness, and set it back on the chair as though returning balance to the universe. The candles burn low, their scent mingling with the faint perfume of roses past their prime. Morning will come soon, and with it, servants bustling, fires relit, conversation rehearsed. But for now, the house exhales. In the gentle collapse between hours, rich and poor share one truth. Everyone sleeps under the same dark sky. You step outside again. The door closes softly, almost grateful. Behind it, silence resumes its reign. Ahead, the city stirs. Noisier, poorer, somehow freer. The street narrows until it becomes something less civilized, an alleyway slick with rain and secrets. The air turns colder, heavier. You can smell rot and ale and the faint sweetness of decay. Here, the gaslights hesitate to shine. This is where London keeps the stories it doesn't show to guests. You pull your coat tighter and step forward, the sound of your boots echoing like memory. The cobbles are uneven, puddles catching fragments of dim light. A rat scurries past, fat and confident. In a doorway, a man sleeps sitting up, hat pulled low, arms folded like apology. The poor made beds wherever exhaustion caught them. Some rented space on the floor for a penny, others simply leaned against walls until morning. The city pretends not to notice. It's easier that way. You hear laughter. Rough, sudden, alive. Down the alley, a group of children huddle near a barrel fire. Their faces glow like tiny suns. They trade jokes older than their bones, jokes meant to distract from hunger. One offers you a smile with a missing tooth. It's impossible not to return it. In this alley, joy is rebellion. A woman passes, shawl pulled tight, perfume cheap but brave. She nods at you, a silent transaction of recognition. The night here runs on unspoken contracts. Who looks away? Who pretends? Who survives? Respectability ends where survival begins. You think of how the same city can hold opera houses and hunger within a mile of each other, balanced by cruelty, maintained by habit. A cat darts between crates, chasing something invisible. A drunk sings softly to himself, the melody half forgotten. His voice cracks on every note, but there's sincerity in it, the kind you only find when pride's been pawned. You stop to listen, and the alley seems to pause too, as if giving him space. Maybe that's mercy in its roughest form. Posters peel from the walls, promises of patent medicines, miracle elixirs, and employment for honest girls. Each one tells a story that ends the same way. Disappointment printed in small font. You brush your fingers against the paper and feel the damp bleed of ink. Lies age poorly. Truth always seeps through. Further in, you find a narrow archway leading to a courtyard no map would bother naming. Laundry lines crisscross above, dripping onto cobbles like a slow metronome. The smell of cabbage and coal mingles with rain. A woman stirs a pot over open flame while a baby sleeps in a box beside her. You wonder what dreams smell like here. Smoke, milk, maybe resilience. A boy runs past, barefoot, laughing too loud for the hour. His joy cuts through the grime like a blade of sunlight. He disappears into shadow before you can wave. And just like that, you realize why this place feels both tragic and holy. It's honest. No velvet, no candles, just life stripped to pulse and breath. The fog thickens, but you can still hear the heartbeat of the alley, the clatter of pots, the cough of someone unseen, the gentle rhythm of existence refusing to quit. You pause, listening. Every sound becomes precious. This, too, is London, the part that endures when the lights go out. You turn back toward the main street, where lamplight resumes and manners return. Behind you, laughter fades, then starts again, softer. The alley doesn't end, it simply waits for the next visitor. You step into the glow, carrying its warmth. Rough, imperfect, real, tucked somewhere behind your ribs. The rattle of wheels reaches you before the carriage itself appears. The sound is hollow, rhythmic, like bones knocking in a wooden chest. Then, out of the mist, it emerges, drawn by two horses breathing clouds into the night. Their hooves strike the cobblestones with a musical clatter, iron meeting stone in steady heartbeat. The driver, bundled in wool, holds the reins like a man steering fate. Gaslight glints off the wet carriage doors, and for a moment you see your own reflection rippling in puddles. Inside, passengers sit wrapped in silence and steam. A lady adjusts her gloves, avoiding the gaze of the stranger opposite her. He smells faintly of tobacco and loneliness. Victorian carriages were tiny theatres of manners. No conversation without invitation, no laughter unless muffled. The air feels rehearsed, even when no one speaks. You imagine the tension of knees brushing accidentally, both parties pretending it didn't happen. The windows fog with breath, turning the world outside into watercolour. Shapes drift past, lamplighters, beggars, lovers hurrying home. London becomes a moving shadow play, glimpsed through frost. The horses snort, the carriage sways, and time folds in on itself. Inside this box of wood and velvet, hours stretch thin. Even impatience feels elegant when wrapped in silence. For the poor, Carriages were symbols more than transport. They represented distance, the kind measured not in miles but in class. Many would never ride one, only hear them pass at night like distant thunder. Still, the sound carried promise. Someone, somewhere, was warm. And sometimes, that's enough to keep a city from despairing completely. Outside, the driver's whip snaps lightly through the air, not in cruelty but in conversation with the horses. The beasts understand rhythm better than language. Their ears flick toward him as if agreeing. A small oil lamp swings at his side, glowing faintly amber. That light means safety, the assurance that motion still equals purpose even in endless fog. You find the thought oddly comforting. Inside, the lady finally exhales. She lifts her veil to sip from a small flask of brandy, pretending it's for her nerves. Across from her, the gentleman stares into nothing, replaying arguments he'll never win. The carriage creaks with secrets. It's remarkable how confined spaces make honesty easier to hide. Outside, the horses pull on, steady and sure, indifferent to the burdens they tow. The streets narrow again, the wheels grinding near the curb. A lamp-post looms, then vanishes behind. Rain starts, soft, cold, precise. The driver hums a hymn to himself, a broken melody carried by wind. You can almost see the droplets on his hat brim, collecting until they surrender to gravity. He looks exhausted, yet content, a man who measures success by arrival, not applause. Soon, the carriage stops. The horses stamp the ground, steam swirling from their flanks. The gentleman steps down first, tipping his hat though no one's watching. The lady follows, her skirts brushing the wet stones. They disappear through a doorway glowing with warmth, and for a brief moment, the fog seems to sigh in satisfaction. Then the driver clicks his tongue, turns the horses, and vanishes once more into the grey. You watch until the sound fades completely, leaving only the echo of hooves in your mind. The street feels emptier now, but calmer too, like the silence after a story ends. You realize that every passing carriage was a dream on wheels, temporary and tender. London, at night, was full of such dreams, and the fog kept their secrets well. You turn away, the smell of wet leather and coal still clinging to your coat. Somewhere distant, another carriage begins its journey, and the city exhales, rhythm restored, night unbroken. You follow a narrow lane until the scent of herbs and alcohol curls toward you like invisible smoke. A small shop glows at the corner, its window filled with jars that glimmer under lamplight. Inside, the air is thick with camphor, mint, and faint sweetness. Medicine or illusion, depending on your luck. The apothecary looks up as you enter, spectacles fogging from your breath. His smile is polite but tired. In Victorian London, sleep was for patients, not healers. Shelves rise to the ceiling, lined with powders, roots, and bottled hope. Labels read elixir, draught, remedy for melancholy. Some of them work, most simply taste convincing. You notice leeches in a jar near the counter, dark commas suspended in glass sentences. Healing, you realize, often came with punctuation marks of pain. The apothecary adjusts his lamp, its flame trembling like a patient pulse. He grinds something in a mortar. The the rhythmic scrape echoing like distant thunder. Each motion is precise, reverent. Medicine then was half science, half superstition, and entirely theatre. A customer coughs behind you, and the apothecary nods gravely, as if diagnosing fate itself. He pours a syrup the colour of old honey into a corked bottle, hands it over, and whispers the price. The exchange feels sacred. On the counter sits a stack of pamphlets promising cures for everything from heartbreak to hysteria. The Victorians feared almost as many things as they worshipped, and the apothecary profited from both. You skim a headline: restorative tonic for the mind weary from industrial fog. You think, if such a thing existed, London's air would be clean by morning. A small boy enters, holding a coin tight in his fist. He asks for something for mother's cough. The apothecary hesitates, then fills a bottle halfway, enough to ease guilt, not cure disease, compassion in measured doses. He pats the boy's head, sends him home through the rain. The bell above the door rings softly, a sound equal parts hope and futility. You wander deeper among the shelves, tracing your fingers over glass bottles. Some glow faintly in the lamplight, others hold powders that shimmer like crushed pearl. In this dim room, science and sorcery share a handshake. You imagine the comfort people found just standing here, the illusion that control could be purchased by the ounce. There's beauty in that kind of self-deception. It's almost kind. The apothecary himself drinks from a chipped cup, the liquid clear and bitter. Gin, not medicine. You catch his eye and he smiles knowingly. For the nerves, he mutters. The city cures and poisons itself in equal measure. Perhaps that's balance, or perhaps it's exhaustion wearing a polite face. Outside, the fog presses against the window like a curious patient. Inside, the flame flickers lower, turning the glass jars into constellations. You stand in silence, surrounded by remedies and relics, and realize that comfort, not healing, was what most people came for. The placebo of being cared for, even briefly, was enough to carry them through another night. The apothecary snuffs his lamp, the room dissolving into amber shadow. You step outside, the bell chiming once more. The street feels colder now, but cleaner somehow, as though the air borrowed a hint of mint from the shop. You breathe it in deeply, letting the illusion work. After all, some nights, belief is the only medicine that matters. You follow the sound of slow water until the Thames reveals itself. Black and silver under the moon. The air here tastes different. Salt, soot, and longing. Fog curls low over the surface like breath over glass. Somewhere nearby, a man laughs softly, and a woman answers in a whisper that sounds like a secret trying not to exist. Love, in Victorian London, belonged to the brave and the foolish, and most people were both. The couple stands close, framed by a gaslight that flickers like guilt. Their shadows melt together on the damp stones. She wears a shawl pulled tight, the fringe brushing his sleeve. He smells of tobacco and rain. Neither speaks for a while. Words would only prove how temporary this warmth really is. The city behind them hums, oblivious. Even passion must wait its turn among the chimneys. Their hands meet, tentative, then certain. The gesture is simple, but in this world, scandalous. Every street had eyes, and every whisper could cost reputation, employment, or safety. Still, they choose contact over consequence. You can almost feel the electricity between gloves, that quiet defiance dressed as tenderness. The Victorians pretended restraint, but their poetry tells on them. The river reflects their courage. Ripples catch light like nervous laughter, spreading, fading, returning. In some ways, the Thames is the most honest lover of all. Beautiful, dangerous, never still. You imagine the couple's reflection breaking apart, rejoining, breaking again, as if even the water understood the rhythm of goodbye. They talk now, barely above the wind. Fragments drift toward you. Soon. Can't. Promise. Every love story here ends in half-truths and train schedules. Duty was the enemy of desire, and propriety its accomplice. But their eyes say what their mouths can't, that even in a city of restraint, feeling refuses to be civilized. You find that reassuring. Somewhere upriver, a barge horn moans deep and mournful. The sound rolls through the fog like a sigh too large for lungs. The couple flinches, then laughs quietly at themselves. Fear and romance often share the same heartbeat. The man removes his hat, presses it to his chest. The woman's breath catches. In another time, another place, this might have been happiness. He kisses her hand, a small, perfect tragedy. She turns to go, her shawl catching the wind like a departing thought. He watches until she disappears into the mist, then lingers by the railing, hands trembling not from cold, but from consequence. The river keeps his secret, as it always has. You realize it's full of them. Confessions dissolved in centuries of tide. You step closer to the edge, watching the water move like smoke. For a moment, you imagine all of London's lovers reflected here, 1,000 fleeting ghosts kissing under borrowed light. The scene feels endless, like memory pretending to be eternal. Then a gust of wind scatters it, leaving only ripples and the faint smell of coal. You walk on, shoes echoing against the stone embankment. Behind you, another couple approaches, drawn by the same foolish hope. You don't turn to look. In this city, romance repeats like a hymn, always quiet, always brave, always unfinished. The door opens with a sigh heavy enough to have opinions. Warmth spills into the fog, carrying tobacco, brandy, and polished wood. Inside, the room glows amber, its air thick with authority. Deep leather chairs huddle around a fire that burns with the confidence of money. A clock ticks discreetly in the corner, measuring conversation in expensive seconds. You step inside, unnoticed, and the hush wraps around you like privilege. Gentlemen's clubs were sanctuaries for those allergic to the ordinary. Here, politics mixed with gossip, philosophy with complaint. Members debated empire, ethics, and the weather, often with equal passion. The Victorians mastered the art of saying everything without revealing anything. Every sentence wore gloves. Even laughter was polite, trimmed at the edges like a well-kept hedge. A servant glides between chairs, refilling glasses without interrupting thoughts. His silence is part of the decor. A group of men argue softly about railway expansion, and their voices steady, confident, utterly detached from the soot-covered workers making it possible. You can't blame them entirely. Detachment was the only way to stay comfortable in a city built on contradiction. The fire crackles, pretending not to listen. One man unfolds a newspaper, its rustle louder than the conversation. Headlines speak of colonial triumphs, industrial growth, and scandals disguised as affairs. You read over his shoulder and feel the heartbeat of an empire convinced it's immortal. The Victorians believed progress was a ladder, but forgot to ask who held it steady. You sip imaginary brandy and let the irony warm your throat. Cigar smoke coils toward the ceiling, creating a false sky. The chandelier above glitters faintly, each crystal trembling like it remembers simpler light. Beneath it, men nod, gesture, and sip. Ritual more than recreation. Clubs like this weren't about pleasure, they were about permanence. The illusion that control could outlast mortality. You can smell the ambition, rich, spiced, and slightly burnt. At one table, a man sits alone, sketching. His cuffs are ink-stained, his drink untouched. He's not here for politics, only quiet. You recognize him instantly, the observer. Every century has one, the person who watches rather than participates, storing details like currency. You nod slightly in his direction, as though sharing an unspoken secret across time. A laugh erupts suddenly, rare and genuine. Heads turn, disapproving. The culprit blushes, apologizes, and drowns the sound in another sip. In this place, even joy must mind its manners. The piano in the corner remains closed, keys asleep under a lace cloth. Silence here isn't emptiness, it's etiquette. Outside, rain taps against the windows, reminding the men that weather still exists. They ignore it gracefully. Someone rings for more cigars. Someone else begins a sentence with, "In Parliament today." The rhythm continues, predictable, polished, peaceful. You can't help admiring the structure of it all, even as you sense its fragility. The fire hisses, a small rebellion against restraint. Eventually the clock chimes. Conversation folds itself away. Coats are collected, hats donned. The men depart one by one, stepping into the night as if returning from a dream. The servant extinguishes the lamps, leaving only the fading scent of smoke and privilege. You linger a moment, letting the darkness settle where the fire once glowed. The club sleeps now, waiting for another evening to pretend the world outside can be kept at bay. The hum begins long before you reach the building, a low, ceaseless vibration that feels more alive than any heartbeat. As you step closer, you see its source, a vast brick factory, windows glowing like tired eyes. Smoke curls upward into the night, turning the fog amber and sour. Inside, machines breathe in rhythm, exhaling heat and dust. The sound is hypnotic, not mechanical exactly, but strangely organic, like the city's pulse amplified through iron lungs. You step through the doorway and are swallowed by motion. Belts spin, wheels blur, pistons sigh. Every sound overlaps until language becomes useless. The air tastes of oil and metal, the floor slick with sweat and soot. Workers move like ghosts through the haze, faces pale beneath layers of grime. They don't speak much. Noise has already taken the role of conversation. Even fatigue becomes choreography. A woman bends over her loom, fingers nimble, eyes hollow. She's been awake 16 hours but still hums a tune between clenched teeth. Music makes endurance rhythmic. Her song drifts upward, blending with the machines, half lullaby, half protest. You realize that survival often sounds like harmony. Nearby, a boy no older than 12 pushes a cart of cotton, his hands red from cold. Childhood, here, is an optional luxury. The foreman watches from a raised platform, his lantern swaying as he paces. His boots shine too much for a man who never bends. Occasionally, he checks his watch, not to mark time, but to remind everyone it belongs to him. Time is a currency spent by the poor and owned by the powerful. You think of your own clock at home, ticking softly in freedom. A whistle shrieks. Shift change. The noise slices the air like judgment. Some workers stagger out, others shuffle in, their faces interchangeable under the same soot. Outside, the cold hits like baptism. They breathe deeply, exhaling smoke that isn't entirely from their lungs. A few laugh. Quiet, exhausted laughter. And it sounds like rebellion disguised as relief. The machines never stop. They hum through the hours, eating daylight, spitting out progress. Cotton threads twist, gears grind. The city grows richer while its workers grow invisible. Yet even in this industrial temple, beauty hides in small things. The sparkle of oil under lamplight, the rhythm of synchronized movement, the quiet pride in hands that make something real. You watch a girl tie a perfect knot and smile to herself. A victory only she understands. Outside, the street glows faintly with coal embers. The departing workers scatter like sparks, vanishing into alleys and taverns. Behind them, the factory continues its endless sermon to the gods of commerce. You linger, half in awe, half in sorrow. Humanity built these machines, yet they seem to own the night now. You can almost hear them whisper, "We never sleep." You step away, the hum fading into distance but not silence. It lingers in your bones, steady, patient. The sound of progress, or penance, depending on who's listening. Either way, it's oddly soothing once you stop resisting it. Farther down the river, the fog begins to thin. A soft glow pulses through it, faint at first, then multiplying. You follow it until you find the source. A long, crooked street lined with lanterns swinging from every shopfront. Their glass is tinted amber and rose, their flames dancing in small cages of metal. The air smells of warm oil, sweet smoke, and oranges. Someone nearby boiling marmalade for the morning. It feels like stepping into the heartbeat of warmth itself. The lanterns here serve no grand purpose. They're not official, they're human. Each one hung by hand, trimmed nightly, lit for love or habit, or both. Their light wavers across faces passing by. Sailors, barmaids, poets, beggars. Every expression looks softer beneath the glow. Even the broken cobblestones seem polished, as if the city wants to look presentable before sleep. You feel yourself walking slower, unwilling to disturb such fragile peace. A man sells paper lanterns from a cart, each painted with flowers or constellations. He dips his brush into blue ink, signs them with a flourish, and lights one just for you. The flame flickers through painted petals, turning them into stained glass. You hand him a coin, though you don't need the lantern, you just want the ritual. He nods. as if understanding that sometimes we buy small beauty to survive big darkness. A woman leans from a window above, shaking a rug into the streetlight. Dust floats downward like golden snow. She hums softly, the tune blending with the creak of the lantern chains. Somewhere, a fiddle begins to play. Slow, melancholy, familiar. Couples pause to listen. Even the drunkards hush. The melody threads through the air like candle smoke, curling around the lamps until the whole street feels alive. In taverns, laughter bursts and fades, doorways release warmth, and the faint scent of ale and roasted meat. Shadows spill out, mingling with the fog. The lanterns catch them, soften them, make them less frightening. You realize that light here isn't conquest, it's compassion. Each flame promises, you're not alone. A gust of wind sweeps through, making the lanterns sway in unison. Their chains rattle like wind chimes tuned to nostalgia. One flame flickers out, then another. Quickly, a boy runs along the row, relighting each with practiced ease. He grins at you as he passes, soot on his nose, courage in his step. You think of how much of civilization depends on small, tireless gestures like his. Rain begins again, but the lanterns refuse to die. Their glass fogs, their flames distort, yet they persist. The reflections multiply in puddles, doubling the light, as if the ground itself refuses to stay dark. You stand still for a long moment, letting the glow seep into you. There's comfort in their defiance, quiet proof that even fragile light can outlast the storm. Eventually, you turn to leave. The lanterns sway behind you, their glow fading into distance until only the smell of oil remains. You realize the city has many kinds of light: gas, candle, coal, kindness. But this one, flickering and human, might be the gentlest of them all. You hear him before you see him, the steady jingle of metal, the creak of a cart, and a voice calling through the fog. Rags, bones, bottles. It's not song, not speech, but something in between. The rag and bone man moves through the sleeping city like a ghost with purpose, collecting what others discard. His horse plods patiently beside him, hooves muffled by soot and drizzle. Every street he travels is a confession. Every item he gathers a story already forgotten. His cart rattles, bottles clinking like church bells for the damned. Old boots, broken chairs, bent spoons, shredded cloth, relics of lives too ordinary for history. The Victorians were masters of reuse long before the word existed. Nothing truly died here. It simply changed shape. You watch as he lifts a cracked mirror, examines it, and smiles faintly at his own reflection. Distorted, yes, but still present. In a way, that's all anyone hopes for. He smells faintly of iron and smoke, the perfume of labor. His hands are calloused, his pockets empty, but his eyes sharp. He knows the city's underbelly better than most priests know their parishes. He's seen opulence rot and poverty shine, sometimes on the same doorstep. The fog doesn't hide things from him, it helps him find them. You realize he's not a scavenger, he's a historian without paper. Children sometimes follow his cart, laughing, hoping for trinkets. He tosses them bottle caps, buttons, bits of colored glass. To them, he's Santa in soot. To adults, he's reminder and mirror. Proof that comfort is temporary and value subjective. yet his voice never sounds bitter. He calls out again, steady, eternal, rags and bones, as though the world were a fair trade between decay and endurance. A dog trots behind, wagging a tail, thick with dirt. The man whistles softly, a tune without words, something older than memory. It drifts through the alleyways, haunting but kind. You imagine him working by instinct, nose for copper, eye for brass, heart for persistence. He knows exactly which doors will open, which windows will close. The city, in return, gives him scraps and secrets. He pauses by a pub where laughter leaks through cracks in the door. For a moment, he stands still, listening. His face softens. Then he moves on. Maybe he prefers the night quiet, the company of broken things that don't lie. His cart groans under the weight of other people's endings, but his shoulders are steady. He's part of London's pulse, collecting, mending, continuing. At dawn, he'll sell the bones to soap makers, the rags to paper mills, the bottles to chemists. Everything finds new purpose. Even waste becomes ingredient. You think about how civilization always depends on someone like him, the invisible caretaker who tidies up progress. His world smells like rust and redemption. He turns the corner, disappearing into fog thicker than memory. Only the faint jingle of his harness remains, fading like a lullaby played on tin bells. You find yourself oddly comforted. Maybe we all leave behind a trail of rags and bones, and maybe that's okay, as long as someone like him knows what to do with them. When the city should be sleeping, it sings instead. You first hear it from a distance, the thin cry of a fiddle, the faint pulse of a drum. Follow it, and you find a square glowing with lamplight and mischief. Street musicians have gathered, a violinist with a cracked bow, a flutist missing 2 teeth, a drummer beating rhythm on an upturned barrel. Their audience is whoever wanders close enough to care. You stop, and immediately you belong. The tune is simple but alive, stitched together from exhaustion and joy. It swells through the fog like warmth through cold fingers. A few couples dance, boots sliding, skirts twirling, laughter tripping over cobblestones. Children clap along, offbeat but enthusiastic. Even the lamplighter pauses mid-step, grinning. The music isn't perfect, but perfection would ruin it. This is the sound of survival, turning itself into art. The violin's voice cracks occasionally, the strings too damp from the air. Each note feels borrowed from better weather. The flutist improvises, eyes closed, body swaying as if the melody guides her instead of the other way around. You notice how everyone here seems both tired and awake, as though the music itself defies fatigue. In a city built on hierarchy, rhythm is the one thing everyone understands equally. Coins clink into a hat, the sound crisp and hopeful. A man in a top hat tosses a shilling and pretends not to care. A chimney sweep adds a penny with pride. For a brief moment, the line between giver and receiver blurs. The song erases titles, leaving only pulse and breath. You realize how rare that feeling is, unity without permission. The smell of roasted chestnuts drifts from a nearby cart, sweet and smoky. Steam curls upward, mingling with music. The vendor hums along, his voice gravelly but sincere. A small dog barks to the beat, earning laughter. The night feels stitched together by small, honest sounds. If hope had a frequency, this would be it. A waltz begins, slower, softer. Two strangers step forward, bow awkwardly and begin to dance. Their shadows ripple across the wet stones, joining hands before they do. The world beyond this square doesn't matter. Not the factories, not the debts, not the fog waiting to swallow everything again. For now, the city belongs to melody. Eventually, the song winds down. The drummer wipes his brow with a grin. The flutist bows dramatically. Applause follows, real, human, uneven. Someone shouts, "One more!" and laughter answers. They play again, not for money this time, but because silence would feel like betrayal. You close your eyes, letting the sound move through you like a heartbeat borrowed from another century. When they finally stop, the silence feels tender, not empty. The fog moves in again, gentle as applause fading into velvet. The musicians pack their instruments, shoulders light. Tomorrow they'll play again, or not. But the song remains, hanging in the damp air like perfume. You walk away humming it without realizing, a tune that somehow knows your name. You find him perched on a small folding stool near Fleet Street, brush in hand, coat buttoned high against the chill. A lantern hangs from a hook beside him, its glass fogged from his own breath. The flame trembles, and he paints it, trembling. Canvas propped on knees, eyes half-lidded, he works as though trying to capture the pulse of air itself. The street around him moves, horses, smoke, footsteps. But he remains still, as if calm could be contagious. Painters of the night were rare then. London was considered too grim, too ordinary to deserve romantic light, but he sees beauty in soot, elegance in fog. His palate smells of turpentine and candle wax. His fingers are blackened by both pigment and poverty. Every stroke is an act of defiance, art made in a city that values commerce more than wonder. You watch him mix grey into gold, turning smog into sunset. It feels like redemption done in oil. A constable pauses, curious, then shrugs and moves on. Art isn't suspicious here, just irrelevant. Yet still the painter works, humming softly to himself. He paints not to sell, but to remember. The Victorians photographed their progress, but painters recorded its soul. The gaslight glows amber against the fog, and he traps that glow under his brush like a firefly in a jar. You almost envy him, his patience, his quiet rebellion against obscurity. On the canvas, the city becomes gentle. The grime softens, the fog turns kind, and every window burns like hope refusing to die. He paints what he wants to believe, not what he sees. You wonder if that's all art ever is, a polite argument with reality. When his brush hesitates, he exhales and starts again, steady and certain. Somewhere between stroke and breath, he finds prayer. A boy approaches, curious. "What are you painting, sir?" The man smiles without looking up. "Light," he says simply. The boy nods, not understanding but sensing truth. He watches for a while, then runs off laughing, his boots scattering puddles. The painter glances after him, adds a small figure in the corner of the canvas, a child-shaped silhouette. History now immortalized in a few inches of pigment. Hours pass. The fog thickens, The candle burns lower, but he doesn't stop. His hands move automatically, guided by instinct and faith. A brush stroke for every heartbeat, a pause for every breath. The painting glows softly now, almost alive. You realize he's created a second London, one that smells of paint and dreams instead of coal. When he finally stops, he studies his work and smiles, as though the city has forgiven him for noticing its beauty. He packs up slowly, careful not to smear what he's captured. The lantern flickers out as he lifts it. For a moment, the street is dark again. Then another lamplighter rounds the corner and restores the glow. You look back at the spot where the painter sat, empty now except for a faint scent of turpentine and hope. Somewhere in a small attic, that canvas will dry in peace, its light forever burning even after the lamps are gone. Rain begins to fall again, soft as ash. You hear the slow roll of wheels before you see them, a black carriage draped in crepe, drawn by horses with plumes as dark as ink. Their hooves strike the cobblestones like distant thunder. The driver wears a top hat dusted with mist, his expression unreadable. Behind him, inside the carriage, rests a coffin, polished wood, gleaming faintly under the gaslight. London never truly sleeps, it just changes tone. Tonight, the city whispers condolences. Funerals here were performances, equal parts, grief and theatre. The Victorians worshipped mourning as if it were art. Black lace, black gloves, black ribbons on doorknobs, even grief had etiquette. The wealthy held processions that lasted hours. The poor borrowed solemnity from silence. Yet whether one rode in the coach or watched from the curb, everyone understood the ritual. To honor the dead was to remind the living of their manners. You watch the coach pass slowly, wheels groaning like tired prayers. The scent of wet horses mixes with lilies, sharp and sweet. Umbrellas tilt in reverence. For a moment, all noise softens. Even the factories seem to pause. The fog thickens respectfully, wrapping the world in pale gauze. It's eerie and beautiful, like sorrow rehearsed too many times. At the tail of the procession walks a small group of mourners, their faces hidden by veils. You can hear the rustle of fabric, the soft drag of boots on stone. A woman carries a bouquet so tight it looks like it might bruise. You wonder who she's lost. Husband, child, version of herself. Grief in this city comes in many forms, but it always sounds the same. Rain on wood, breath in fog, silence between wheels. The carriage turns down a narrow lane, leading toward the cemetery. You follow from a distance, your footsteps echoing faintly. The iron gates creak open, welcoming without joy. Inside, candles flicker between headstones like small rebellions against oblivion. Death here is polite but persistent. You feel the chill seep through your coat, not from fear, but from recognition. Victorians were fascinated by death. They photographed their dead, wore their hair in lockets, wrote letters to those buried. It wasn't morbid, it was loyal. They understood impermanence too well to pretend otherwise. Maybe that's why mourning felt almost comforting, a structure for sorrow. You trace your finger along a wet gravestone and feel the rough truth of it. Memory, like stone, erodes slower than pain. The rain turns heavier, the mourners scatter, black umbrellas blooming like dark flowers. The coach waits, patient, dripping. When the last prayer fades, the driver flicks his reins. The horses move again, their plumes nodding solemnly. The coffin disappears into fog, leaving only wheel tracks filling slowly with rain. You realize the city has perfected the art of letting go gracefully. Standing there, you notice something unexpected. Peace. In the hush after departure, even the graveyard feels alive. The grass shivers, candles hiss, air hums with quiet continuity. You think, maybe that's all eternity is. The world remembering you kindly for a little while longer. And then, like the mourners, you turn back toward the living, the soft rhythm of rain guiding you home. You pass a narrow courtyard and notice a single window glowing weakly behind fogged glass. Inside, small silhouettes shift, thin, uncertain shapes moving in half-light. It's an orphanage, one of many scattered across the city, like unacknowledged confessions. The air outside smells of porridge, soap, and damp wool. A small hand presses against the glass, fingers leaving prints that fade almost instantly. Behind it, laughter echoes, small, quick, and heartbreakingly hopeful. Inside, the matron walks the hall with a candle. Its light catches faces briefly, a girl missing a shoe, a boy clutching a wooden horse, missing a leg, another whispering to no one in particular. Victorian orphanages were factories of obedience, discipline wrapped in charity. Meals were thin, rules thick, affection rationed carefully. Yet somehow these children still found ways to play, to imagine, to hope. That resilience smells faintly of miracles and dust. The beds line up like punctuation marks in a long, weary sentence. Blankets are thin but shared, because warmth multiplies when divided. The older children tuck the younger ones in, their gestures clumsy but kind. You watch as a boy sneaks an extra biscuit from his pocket and places it beside a sleeping friend. No one teaches generosity here. It's born naturally in places where there's nothing else to give. Rain streaks the window. The children listen, quiet now, the rhythm soft enough to lull them. For some, this sound will become the lullaby of adulthood. Rain on glass meaning safety. The matron hums softly, a hymn missing half its verses. Her face is tired, but her voice carries something gentler than duty. You realize that even in strictness, kindness often survives in disguise. A small girl sits upright, drawing shapes in condensation on the glass, circles, stars, hearts. The same language all children use when they want to believe in something bigger. You imagine she's tracing a story, perhaps her mother's face, perhaps the outline of a dream she refuses to forget. The candlelight catches her reflection, and for an instant, the room looks doubled, the real and the imagined side by side. In one corner, a wooden cross hangs crooked on the wall. Its shadow stretches long and uneven, falling across the beds like a promise that's doing its best. Faith, here, isn't doctrine, it's bedtime. The kind that asks for nothing except tomorrow. You can almost hear their whispered prayers, short, simple, spoken into pillow seams where no one can correct them. The candle burns lower, the air thick with sleep. A few coughs punctuate the quiet. The matron sighs, setting the light aside. She knows half these children will grow into factory workers or soldiers, maybe mothers who hum the same broken hymn, but for tonight they are safe. And that's enough. The flame trembles, then steadies. You realize that mercy, however small, glows brighter when it has to. You step back into the fog. The building fades behind you, but that faint laughter lingers, threading through the night air like smoke from a forgotten chimney. You breathe it in, fragile, fleeting, but real, and walk on with the warmth of borrowed hope. A door swings open somewhere ahead, spilling amber light and the smell of ale, onions, and tobacco into the fog. The sound follows: laughter, argument, the sharp crack of a mug on wood. Taverns were London's lungs. They exhaled fatigue, inhaled relief. Inside, the air is thick but alive. Boots scrape, coins clink, voices rise and fall like waves. You step through the doorway, and the world outside dissolves into background hum. The floor sticks faintly underfoot, a mix of spilled beer and sawdust. A fiddler plays from the corner, his bow dancing as fast as his grin. The fire roars, fat logs hissing like they disapprove of silence. Patrons crowd close, their faces painted with sweat and satisfaction. In the flicker of light, you see coal dust, lace, and laughter coexisting. Proof that the night doesn't care about class when it's this warm. A man at the bar raises his glass, toasting something he's already forgotten. A woman beside him laughs, the sound full and fearless. Victorian society might have frowned at her confidence, but the tavern doesn't. Here, names and titles lose their sharp edges. Everyone's story tastes the same after the second drink. Sweet at first, bitter by morning. The innkeeper wipes his hands on an apron that's seen better decades. He pours pints with the grace of a priest distributing communion. Another? He asks no one in particular. The answer is always yes. Behind him, shelves of bottles gleam like stained glass for sinners. The smell is intoxicating. Malt, smoke, and the faint citrus of spilled gin. It's the scent of escape measured by the ounce. In a corner, two sailors argue softly about ghosts at sea. Their words slur, but their eyes stay sharp, haunted by stories too heavy to tell sober. At the next table, a chimney sweep hums along with the fiddler, his hands black with soot and joy. You realize this is the only cathedral that truly welcomes everyone. The sermon here is laughter, and the congregation forgives everything by last call. The fire pops, sparks flying like punctuation to unseen jokes. Someone begins a song, rough, rowdy, heartfelt. Others join in, voices mismatched but united. You catch the refrain easily. Something about love, loss, and running out of money. It's not profound, but it feels holy in its honesty. You tap your foot without meaning to. The fiddler shifts into a slower tune. The mood softens. A woman sways alone near the hearth, her eyes closed, lips moving as if counting blessings. Perhaps she's remembering someone, or pretending to. The melody fills every corner, wrapping the room in nostalgia. Even the laughter pauses for a moment to listen. You realize that music, like warmth, multiplies when shared. Outside, rain drums on the windows, but no one notices. Time here has gone elastic. A man snores in the corner. Another confesses his dreams to anyone who will pretend to listen. It's messy, human, and profoundly alive, the kind of night that history never records because it's too ordinary. And yet, those are the ones that make the world bearable. You finish your imaginary drink and step back into the cold. The door closes behind you, muffling the laughter. The fog swallows the sound, but its echo lingers in your chest. Proof that somewhere, joy still happens loudly enough to be heard by the lonely. Somewhere behind a curtained window, the scratching of a pen breaks the stillness. The faint light of a candle reveals a cluttered desk, papers piled like snowdrifts, ink blots blooming like bruises. The writer leans close, eyes shadowed, fingers smudged black. His quill trembles slightly, as though uncertain what truth it's about to confess. Outside, the city hums faintly, indifferent. Inside, imagination refuses to sleep. Writers of the Victorian night were nocturnal creatures, half scholar, half ghost. The world was quieter after midnight, the air more obedient. He dips the quill again, ink glistening like blood under waxy light. Words spill onto the page. Fragments of confession, fragments of invention. He doesn't always know which is which. You watch his lips move silently, mouthing dialogue no one else will ever hear. His room smells of ink, coal, and unwashed resolve. The fire beside him has burned low, a red pulse in the grate. Somewhere on the table, cold tea grows a skin of neglect. He doesn't notice. Writers often mistake exhaustion for inspiration. He pauses, reads the last line aloud, shakes his head, and scratches it out. The candle flickers in agreement, editing by flame. Outside, the fog presses its face to the window, curious. Inside, time thickens. Each sentence births another, and the page feels like a tide coming in. The Victorians loved long sentences. They trusted time to listen. He writes one now that stretches across 3 lines, a breathless tangle of hope and guilt. You feel your own heartbeat slow to match its rhythm. He stops again, sighs, and glances at a framed photograph on the desk. A woman, expression kind and distant. Perhaps she's real. Perhaps she's fiction that got too convincing. Either way, she watches him with silent patience. He lifts his pen, hesitates, then writes her name again anyway. Creation is often just repetition with feeling. The candle gutters. He cups his hand around the flame, protecting it instinctively. The room glows briefly gold, like memory pretending to be warmth. His eyelids droop, but his mind refuses surrender. He writes until the ink fades to grey, and his letters stumble into sleep. The final line trails off mid-word, the truest sentence he's written tonight. When morning comes, he'll wake with a sore neck and an unfinished thought. He'll read what he wrote and find brilliance in 1 line, nonsense in 10. But for now, he's content in the trance between exhaustion and creation. You realize it's not the writing that matters. It's the staying awake long enough to find the truth hiding behind it. Outside, the lamplighter extinguishes the last street flame. Dawn stretches pale fingers through the fog. The writer's candle dies with dignity. The room darkens, the quill rests, and silence, that ancient collaborator, resumes its work. It begins subtly, like a rumor, the faint paling of the sky beyond the rooftops. You almost don't notice until the fog turns from grey to silver. The city, so loud all night, now whispers its secrets back into silence. Chimneys exhale soft columns of smoke. Sparrows test their voices cautiously. Dawn in Victorian London was not bright. It was tender, like the city apologizing for itself. The cobblestones glisten from the night's rain, catching the first shy light. A milkman's cart rattles down the lane, bottles clinking like fragile promises. Somewhere, a bakery door opens, releasing the smell of yeast and warmth. The cold retreats reluctantly, giving way to breath visible but hopeful. You feel it too, that quiet invitation. To begin again. The street sweepers appear, pushing their brooms like priests performing morning rituals. The sound of bristles on stone is rhythmic, soothing. They erase footprints, sweep away ash, make the city look innocent again. You think about all that happened while London slept. Laughter, loss, love, labour. All of it reduced now to faint traces. The sweepers don't know they're poets, but they are. Windows open one by one. Curtains lift like eyelids. A woman empties dishwater into the gutter, the steam curling up to meet the sun. A child yawns from a doorway, rubbing his eyes, barefoot but unbothered. Morning in this city doesn't roar, it exhales. The fog rises higher, revealing rooftops like the tops of forgotten thoughts. Even the pigeons look drowsy. In an upstairs room, someone strikes a match, the day's first flame. The smell of sulphur cuts briefly through the damp air. Coffee joins it, strong and forgiving. The city stretches its limbs slowly, careful not to disturb the fragile peace it built overnight. For a moment, everything feels balanced. Noise and silence, light and shadow, past and possibility. A church bell rings faintly in the distance, not as command but as reminder. One note, two, then silence again. You think of all the watchmen, bakers, lovers, and labourers who've carried the night to this doorstep of dawn. The world feels grateful to them, though it will never say so. You whisper a thank you on its behalf. The fog dissolves into light completely now, leaving behind only memory. The Thames glints, alive again, carrying last night's secrets toward the sea. The city is reborn, though it never really died. Just paused, took a breath, and remembered it was human. You inhale deeply, the air sharp with newness, and exhale the last trace of coal from your lungs. The first cry of a street vendor cuts the calm, announcing morning bread. The sound is rough but reassuring, proof that life resumes on schedule. Somewhere, a writer finally sleeps, a lamplighter finally rests, a baker finally smiles. The circle closes softly. London wakes, unaware of the poetry it just performed. You turn one last time to look at the street, glowing faintly gold now. The night has left its fingerprints everywhere, on glass, on stone, on memory. You feel them fading, but not vanishing. That's how nights like this end, not with silence, but with continuity. The city doesn't start over. It simply continues to dream with its eyes open. Now the night has exhaled, and the city drifts in the space between waking and dreaming. You walk through streets that seem half remembered, their shapes softened by early light. Chimneys sigh, rooftops glisten, and the faint scent of coal smoke lingers like a lullaby. London, for once, feels tender, its noise wrapped in blankets of fog and fatigue. You can almost hear it breathing, a slow rhythm rising from brick and bone. The air carries warmth from invisible fires still burning behind shutters. Curtains ripple slightly where a breeze sneaks in. Cats stretch along doorsteps, tails flicking with the luxury of belonging nowhere in particular. The cobblestones gleam faintly, holding fragments of last night's footsteps. You imagine the city dreaming about itself, replaying every whisper, carriage wheel and laugh, but slower, softer, kinder. In this hush, even sound seems to hesitate. The Thames murmurs beneath bridges, its surface trembling with light. Somewhere, a clock tower yawns through the final chime of dawn, tired of accuracy. You listen for echoes and realize they've turned to silence. This is the hour when even memory feels drowsy, when the mind wanders but refuses to arrive. You let it drift, carried by the rhythm of invisible tides. The lamplighter passes one last time, extinguishing what remains of the night. Each lamp goes dark with a sigh, smoke curling upward like released thoughts. You watch the faint trails vanish into the air and wonder if forgetting can ever feel this gentle. The world looks cleaner without edges. Maybe that's what peace really is, not perfection, but blur. You notice the color of the fog changing, pale blue now, streaked with hints of rose. The city wears its exhaustion beautifully, as if proud of having survived another darkness. Somewhere, a kettle whistles, a bird experiments with melody, a door creaks open to tomorrow. You breathe deeply, letting the air fill your chest. And it feels like the first kind thing the world has done all night. The city doesn't sleep exactly, it dozes, one eye open, one closed. You picture it as a giant heart wrapped in soot, still beating beneath the quiet. Every window, every alley, every echo part of that pulse. You realize how rare it is to hear stillness in something so vast. It makes you small in the best way, small enough to rest inside it. Soon, the sun will climb higher, washing the last softness away. But for now, this pause belongs to you. The fog curls like smoke from a snuffed candle, and the world seems to whisper, "Stay a moment longer." You do, because rest isn't always sleep. Sometimes it's simply being present when the noise forgets to return. You close your eyes for a breath, and for the first time tonight, you feel weightless, as if the city is cradling you in its quiet arms. Its heartbeat steadies yours, its silence fills your thoughts. The morning light touches your face gently, not to wake you, but to promise that you're allowed to drift a little longer. You find yourself standing before a bakery again, the same one that smelled of sugar and hope. The windows are fogged from within, and golden light leaks through like liquid comfort. Inside, loaves rise slowly, obedient to time and heat. The air hums with soft crackles of crust forming. You can almost taste it, warmth becoming tangible. It reminds you of something deeper than hunger, something close to belonging. The baker moves quietly, hands steady, movements rehearsed. His apron is dusted white, his smile faint but certain. He hums a tune older than the recipe, perhaps older than the city itself. Each loaf he lifts is an act of faith, that people will return, that morning will always come, that the world, despite everything, still wants to feed itself. You feel that faith in your chest like the echo of a prayer you didn't mean to say. Outside, the cold watches patiently through the window, unable to enter. You lean closer to the glass, feeling its warmth radiate like forgiveness. Steam clouds the view, blurring everything except the soft glow of the oven. The smell is overwhelming. Flour, yeast, sugar, patience. You think of all the hands across centuries that shaped dough the same way, repeating hope as ritual. Bread, after all, is humanity's oldest promise. The baker wraps a loaf in paper and sets it on the counter. A woman enters, her coat soaked with rain. They exchange no words, just smiles. The transaction is silent, sacred. When she leaves, she holds the bread close to her chest as though carrying light. You understand her completely. Warmth, once found, must be protected. Even the simplest comfort can feel like salvation when the world is cold. You close your eyes and imagine breaking that bread open. The crackle of crust, the sigh of steam, the soft weight of something made by hand. It's a sound and scent that erases centuries. The Victorians knew this too. They lived surrounded by struggle, but never forgot the poetry of sustenance. A loaf was never just food, it was proof of survival, written in crumbs. The baker wipes his brow, checks the fire, adjusts a tray. His movements slow now, almost meditative. You realize that repetition can be peace. In a world obsessed with progress, he chooses constancy. Every morning the same ritual, every night the same fatigue. But somewhere in that rhythm, meaning ferments quietly. You smile, maybe purpose isn't about invention at all, maybe it's about care. Outside again, you breathe in the last traces of sweetness escaping through the vent. The scent follows you down the street, like memory refusing to fade. It mixes with fog, coal, and the faint salt of the Thames until you can't tell where comfort ends and air begins. The city seems softer now, as if it, too, has eaten. You realize warmth is never truly lost. It lingers in the spaces where kindness once was. And tonight, there are many. You find yourself once more inside a small room, dim and hushed. A single candle burns near the window, its flame barely taller than a whisper. The wax has melted unevenly, forming rivers and valleys that shine like miniature landscapes. The air smells faintly of tallow and soot, sweetened by time. The candle trembles, alive, uncertain, stubborn. You watch its glow bend and stretch as though fighting sleep itself. The Victorians understood candles in ways we've forgotten. They trusted them, depended on them, spoke to them. A candle wasn't decoration, it was company. Its flame listened without judgment, marking the hours gently. You imagine someone reading by it long after they should have slept, the words flickering with every breath of wind. The light makes promises it can't keep, and yet you believe it anyway. The wax slides down in slow motion, pooling around the base like the world exhaling. Each drip is a moment, a thought, a day surrendering. The flame hisses softly as it eats what's left of itself, a small act of courage disguised as inevitability. You feel a strange empathy for it, this fragile fire that gives everything and asks nothing. The room seems to lean toward it, as if unwilling to let it go. In its light, even shadows look gentle. The cracks in the wall blur, the dust becomes stars. You can almost convince yourself that time has paused, that the night won't end until the wick decides it's ready. The flame tilts, wavers, rights itself. Determination in miniature. The kind you wish more people had. Quiet persistence, unannounced devotion. A moth drifts near, circling, fascinated. It dances too close and retreats again, caught between wonder and fear. You understand the feeling. How often do we move toward what can destroy us just because it's beautiful? The candle doesn't mind. It keeps burning, as though forgiving the world for its mistakes. Eventually, the wax gives way. The flame flickers wildly, then steadies one last time, a sigh made visible. You catch your breath without meaning to. The light shrinks into itself, a golden bead trembling at the edge of being, and then, with exquisite grace, it disappears. Smoke curls upward, fragrant and delicate, tracing the ghost of what once was. The darkness that follows isn't empty. It feels full, warm, content. The room exhales as if relieved. You sit still for a while, eyes adjusting, realizing that the candle hasn't truly gone out. It's just changed form, into scent, into memory, into calm. That's how endings should be, you think. Not abrupt, but inevitable. Soft, complete. Outside, the fog presses closer, curious about the quiet. Inside, everything rests in shadow and peace. The candle has finished dreaming, but you haven't. You walk through the quiet streets again, your footsteps muffled by mist. The cobblestones glisten under the pale light of dawn, and as you step, you almost think you hear something. Faint, rhythmic, familiar. The ground seems to hum. If you listen closely, it sounds like voices, whispers woven through the stone. They're not ghosts exactly, but memories too stubborn to fade. Every city keeps its history beneath your feet. Each stone tells a story. One remembers the weight of a carriage rolling toward a wedding. Another remembers a protest, boots pounding like thunder. Some hold laughter, some hold blood. Together they form a mosaic of existence, invisible yet eternal. You can feel it when you walk. The past rising through the soles of your shoes, reminding you that nothing truly disappears, only rearranges. You stop beside a drain where water trickles softly, carrying the night away. The sound mingles with the whispers, gentle, deliberate. You imagine the voices of chimney sweeps, market sellers, lovers sneaking home before dawn. Their lives pressed into the ground like signatures. The stones are polite custodians. They don't judge, they simply remember. You find that comforting. Forgetting is a privilege they were never given. The air smells faintly of rain and rust, of things that have endured. You kneel, running your hand along the cold surface. It feels smoother than you expect, worn by centuries of repetition, thousands of feet, thousands of lives, all smoothing the rough edges until only story remains. You wonder if that's what living is, being eroded gently by time until memory is the only shape left. In the distance, a wagon creaks to life, its wheels echoing softly. The sound joins the hum beneath the ground, blending perfectly. You close your eyes, and for a moment it feels like the city is singing, not loudly, not proudly, but with the quiet confidence of survival. Every note is small, human, necessary. The Victorians built their world on stone and sweat. They paved over grief, love, ambition, layered lives upon lives until the ground itself became biography. You realize how strange it is that we walk on history daily without noticing. Each step is a conversation with the past, a call and response between now and then. The cobbles answer with patience, "We're still here." You rise, take another step, and the hum follows. It's steady, soothing, hypnotic, like a heartbeat carried through time. The fog swirls around your ankles, and for a brief second, you imagine the city breathing through you. You're part of it now. One more set of footprints added to the archive. When you leave, the stones will remember you too, faintly but faithfully. You keep walking, the rhythm gentle, endless. Every street, every echo, every whisper beneath you becomes a lullaby. The city isn't haunting you, it's humming you to sleep. The river flows slower here, its voice hushed beneath stone arches, blackened by centuries of smoke. You step under the bridge, away from the sound of waking streets. The air changes immediately, cooler, still, echoing faintly like a cathedral made of water. Drops fall from above at intervals too perfect to be accidental. Each splash feels like punctuation, reminding you to breathe between thoughts. Beneath these bridges, time behaves differently. The Victorians passed over them daily, hurrying, worrying, never noticing what peace existed below their feet. Here, the world pauses. The river forgets to rush, the fog thickens but doesn't smother. You hear the gentle slosh against stone, the sigh of wood from passing barges. It's not silence, but conversation slowed to kindness. You look up and see the underside of the bridge, arches carved with soot and moss, initials etched by hands now dust. Some are declarations of love, some just names. Together they make a scripture of defiance, proof that someone once stood here and refused invisibility. You trace one with your finger, half washed away by damp air. The stone feels cool, but alive. Across the water, the reflection of gaslight wavers. It stretches, shivers, then recomposes. A living painting that repaints itself every second. You think of the painter from earlier, how he tried to capture this same movement on canvas. He never could, because rivers don't pose. They tell the truth only to those willing to listen quietly. So you listen. The sound becomes rhythm. The rhythm becomes rest. Somewhere above, a carriage rumbles overhead, its echoes softened by distance. The vibration trembles through the arch and into your bones. It's strange how comforting it feels. The pulse of life continuing above while you drift here below, safe in the city's shadow. This is London's heartbeat, muffled but steady, ancient but forgiving. A gull lands nearby, its white feathers ghostly in the dim light. It preens, shakes water from its wings, then stills. For a long moment, the two of you share the same air, the same calm. You realize bridges aren't just for crossing, they're for hiding, for pausing, for remembering that movement isn't the same as meaning. The bird lifts off, wings slicing the quiet open again. The smell of the river rises. Mud, iron, life. It isn't pleasant, but it's real. The Victorians called it foul. You call it honest. Every city needs a scent to remind it of its mortality. You take another breath and feel the damp air cool your lungs. It tastes like truth. Heavy, old, necessary. You stay until the water starts to glow faintly gold, morning light slipping through cracks in the bridge. It paints the ceiling with trembling light, like stars seen from underwater. The day is coming, but not yet. You linger for one more moment, storing the quiet inside you. When you finally step back into the fog, the noise feels gentler, as if it knows where you've been. High above the street, a tower leans quietly into the fog. Its face glows faintly, pale against the soft grey sky. The hands of the clock move slowly. Too slowly to notice unless you care to. You look up, watching time perform its most convincing illusion. Stillness. Each tick is a whisper you can almost hear if you listen with your whole body. Victorian London worshipped clocks. They measured not just hours, but morality. To be punctual was to be pure, lateness a moral flaw. But standing here, you realize how absurd that is. The clock doesn't care. It moves at the same pace for saints and thieves alike. Its rhythm is mercy disguised as machinery. You breathe in sync with it, slow and deliberate. The bell above you shifts faintly, metal expanding with the first touch of sunlight. Soon it will ring, deep, resonant, unbothered by who listens. Bells in this city marked everything: births, deaths, prayers, curfews. They told people when to love, when to mourn, when to stop pretending. You imagine the sound vibrating through brick and bone, shaking dust from memory. The tower's stones are damp, streaked with soot and rain. You place a hand against them, feeling the cold hum beneath your palm. It's steady, loyal, indifferent. The Victorians built these structures to last, and somehow they did. You can almost sense the thousands of glances lifted toward this same clock. Factory workers, timing shifts, lovers counting minutes until parting, dreamers wondering how long hope should take. The hands move again, imperceptibly. A minute gained, a lifetime lost. You smile at the thought that time doesn't really pass. We do. The clock merely witnesses. Its face remains serene, its heart metallic but kind. In a world obsessed with rushing, it keeps the simplest promise imaginable: forward, always forward, but never cruelly so. A gust of wind sweeps by, carrying the faint chime of smaller bells somewhere distant. The sound mingles with your heartbeat until you can't tell which is which. For a moment, you think you could stand here forever, suspended between seconds. It's an illusion, of course, but a comforting one. Some illusions are worth keeping. The bell tolls at last. A low, solemn note that seems to roll through the fog and into your chest. It doesn't demand attention. It invites presence. Each vibration feels like a breath, slow and measured. You close your eyes and let it move through you. When it fades, the silence that follows feels sacred. You open your eyes to find the hands still turning, tireless. The clock resumes its quiet duty, unbothered by applause.
You turn to leave, smiling. The world below moves again, people scurrying like seconds. Above them all, the clock keeps perfect time, not because it must, but because it chooses to. You wander down a narrow street that seems almost embarrassed to exist. The signs are faded, the bricks uneven. the air carrying a faint perfume of coal and roses. It's quiet here, the kind of quiet that feels earned.
You realize this street has been forgotten, tucked between grand avenues like a loose page in a finished book. Yet even in neglect, it breathes. The fog moves slower here, lingering as though reluctant to leave. Every doorway tells a small story. A chipped knocker shaped like a lion, a cracked window patched with paper, a cat sleeping where the world won't find it. Once, this lane might have been busy. Carriages clattering, vendors shouting, children running. Now only the echoes remain, stretched thin and kind. You can almost hear them, faint laughter folded into the walls like pressed flowers. The street doesn't resent being forgotten. It wears its obscurity with grace. The weeds between the cobblestones bloom in modest triumph. The moss glows faintly emerald against soot. Even decay here feels patient. The Victorians built for permanence, but permanence is polite fiction. Time always wins, yet this street has learned to lose beautifully. A door creaks open, and an old man steps out, broom in hand. He nods at you as though recognizing a fellow traveler of quiet places. His sweep is slow, methodical, not to clean, but to remember. Dust rises, catching morning light like gold dust pretending to be important. Never too early, he mutters, though he's speaking to the air. You nod, though he's already forgotten you. The sound of your footsteps follows softly. They echo but never return, as if the street absorbs them to keep for later. You wonder if the city does the same with people. Maybe no one truly disappears. They just fade into background music. That idea feels comforting, not sad. You touch the cold stone wall and feel it hum faintly beneath your palm, alive in its stillness. Further along, ivy climbs the remnants of an old shop sign. The lettering is nearly gone, but you can just make out tea and comfort, a fine philosophy for any age. You smile at the thought that even the forgotten parts of the world once sold warmth. The wind sighs between the buildings, carrying the faint smell of cinnamon from nowhere you can find. At the end of the lane, the fog thickens again, curling around your ankles like a cat. You stop, looking back at where you came from. The street is already fading into the mist, its edges dissolving into dream. You whisper a small thank you, unsure to whom, perhaps the city, perhaps the silence. Then you keep walking, the sound of your steps joining the long, slow memory of everything left behind. You emerge from the fog to find yourself on a bridge once more. The sun has finally broken through, soft and uncertain, as if afraid to disturb what the night left behind. It spreads across the river in ribbons of gold, turning the water into molten quiet. The city awakens around you, distant chimneys exhaling, church bells whispering in chorus. Everything glows gently, washed clean by the hours that came before. You rest your hands on the cold railing and watch light ripple across the surface. It catches on the water, the rooftops, the glass of windows, lingering longest where no one notices. London looks different now, almost innocent. You realize that light isn't the opposite of darkness, it's its memory. Every shadow proves the flame existed. The thought makes you smile. A boat drifts past, silent except for the soft slap of oars. The ferryman hums a tune you almost recognize, something tender and unhurried. You close your eyes and let it carry you. The wind tastes faintly of salt and smoke, familiar and new at once.
Morning light paints your eyelids amber, and you remember every candle, every window, every flicker that guided you through the night. They're all here, refracted in the water, unextinguished. The Victorians used to say that light revealed character. But you think maybe it reveals kindness, the quiet kind that doesn't announce itself. The kind found in lamplighters, bakers, seamstresses, even in the fog itself, which softened everything it touched.
You see that kindness everywhere now, woven through the city like hidden thread. It was never gone, only sleeping. A gull glides overhead, its reflection slicing the water in two. The ripples widen, then settle again. Change always looks like disturbance before it becomes peace. You breathe deeply, feeling the air move differently. Lighter, forgiving. The night didn't vanish, it simply transformed into memory. You think that maybe people do too. The bridge beneath you vibrates faintly as a train crosses far away, its distant rhythm blending with the murmur of the river. It sounds like continuity, like the heartbeat of a city that refuses to stop. You realize you've been listening to it all along, through the laughter, the silence, the songs, the rain. It's the same pulse, only slower now. Soothing. Eternal. The sun rises higher. The fog burns away in streaks of silver. Windows open, curtains flutter, and the city begins its day without fanfare. You stand there for a while longer, reluctant to move, because you know this light won't last. And that's precisely what makes it precious. Still, something inside you feels permanently illuminated. You turn to leave, walking slowly back toward the waking streets. The river glitters behind you, carrying the reflection of the sky like a secret it will never tell. The warmth lingers on your face, gentle and sure. The city breathes. The light stays. And somewhere in the distance, a single lamplighter, the last one, smiles as he puts his pole away, ready to rest until the world asks for night again. The city has quieted now. What was once alive with footsteps and whispers has settled into something gentler, an exhale after a long confession. The fog has thinned, the river softens, and the sky glows with the faint warmth of new light. You stand still, somewhere between memory and morning, and everything feels suspended, weightless, forgiven. The world doesn't ask anything of you here. It only invites you to notice. The way smoke curls upward from unseen chimneys, the hush that lingers where laughter once lived, the tender pulse of a city catching its breath. Even the cold feels different now, less cruel, more like a reminder that warmth existed and still does, quietly. All around, fragments of night remain. A half-burnt candle in a window, a loaf cooling on a sill, the faint scent of wet stone and ash. They are small proofs that the night was real, that people lived and loved and endured while the world was asleep. You realize this is what beauty often looks like, not fireworks or spectacle, but endurance done softly. The river below gleams faintly, carrying away the secrets of the dark. The water has seen everything, rich and poor, sorrow and song, and yet it flows without judgment, That's the mercy of time. It keeps moving, even when we don't. You listen to it murmur beneath the bridge, and it sounds almost like a promise that life will keep unfolding, quietly, faithfully. Somewhere behind you, the city begins to stir. A window opens. A kettle sings. Someone laughs too early, and the sound carries far. But you stay here a little longer, letting the calm hold you. The fog touches your face like a farewell, soft and certain. You've seen the city's heart tonight, tired, imperfect, kind, and now it lets you rest. You think of the lamplighters, the bakers, the children, the watchmen, the dreamers, all of them still breathing in the rhythm of this morning. Their lives continue unseen, but their warmth remains, woven into the air you're standing in. The world feels immense again, but gentle. You belong to it, quietly, without trying. The sun rises fully now. Gold spills over rooftops, over chimneys, over glass. The last trace of night folds itself neatly into memory. And in that moment, between shadow and light, breath and silence, you understand something simple and true. Peace was never the absence of noise. It was the decision to listen differently. So breathe. Let the light find you, patient and kind. The city will keep watch until you wake again. Sleep well, traveler. May your dreams smell of rain and coal and bread, and may you always find your way back to the warmth that waits at the edge of every night.